This video here is going to be on the repair of my What's Up meter. I've had this for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. The issue has become that the ground wire here has actually broken. So you can see that I'm able to pull on that, and the only thing holding that wire together is the insulation. And so what I'm going to be doing is taking my Dremel, and I'm going to be opening the case up. So far what I have is I did open up this hole here so that I could see in there where the red wire was going to go. And it looks like the red wire comes in on the top side of the board, as where the ground wire was on the back side. And then of course I've just opened this up on this side, and you can see here the ground wire is on this side. So I'm going to guess that the red wire is going to be somewhere along in here and somewhere along in here. So I will open that up next. To bring you up to speed to what I have done, first off, we knew that I had cut open the hole so that I could get to the wire that was broken, and of course I was able to do that. And then I decided I would go ahead and investigate the other wires, just in case either down the road they were broke, or if in fact they were weak, I would go ahead and replace them now while I'm doing this. And also I found that this wire here was damaged, so I need to go ahead and replace it. So now I'm going to go ahead and replace all the wires. Well, I went to the front side because you can clearly see, maybe you can see, that the red wire is actually going under the board. Well, what I did was I went ahead and sacrificed this one because number one, I wanted to know, but more importantly, I can share the information so that you will know if you're interested, if you have a What's Up meter. What I did was I went ahead and cut open the case, and the way I cut open the case, again wearing my safety glasses, I took a cutoff wheel and I went around the seam here, and then I pressed open this gently, of course, taking some time, but I managed to break the seal, or the seam, on the back side. So I was able to separate the top from the bottom. Now we can clearly see that we have two pads here, and this one here I had actually unsoldered before I got to this point. Then I was going to go ahead and try to figure out where this wire here went, and it was obvious that now it is very clear that it goes underneath the board, but it doesn't go all the way, so you can't access it from the other side like I was trying to do here. So whenever I drilled this hole and I seen that I did not have access to the wire, that's when I decided I would split the case. And in doing so, this wire actually passes through. So the hot wire goes all the way through, but the ground wire is actually the one that split, and it's in two parts here. So you have this one going out to the ESC, and of course this one here would be going to the battery. Okay. Now, what I've done is I replaced my wires here. The positive goes all the way through, the ground for this side, the ground for that side, and now I can take this and put it back in my case, or the top cover, put it on, and then put the other cover on the back. My wires are considerably shorter, and that's because I'm going to try something different here with this. With the wires being short, number one, it's all I had, but more importantly, and number two, I think it might be a better way to go, because with the wires being short, they're not going to get a lot of flex, and because that's initially what broke the wire to begin with, is the fact that they were so long, the weight of them had a tendency to flex them quite a bit. So I'm going to assume that if the wires aren't very long, then they're not going to be, they're not going to have that tendency to be really flexed a lot. Now I'm going to take a battery and we're going to plug this up and see if it still works. So if I plug this in, and yes, 15.3. Okay, so I am getting the voltage reading. So I'm going to assume that my solder job has worked. At least half of it did. So now I've got to figure out what I'm going to do to close this up, because I think I will leave it so that I can actually open it back up at a later time, maybe even to replace the wires again. So if you run across this issue with yours, you don't necessarily have to replace it, but you do need a few soldering skills and a Dremel tool. And like I say, if you're going to use a cutoff wheel like I did, do it in a safe manner. Here's a look at the what's up after I decided to go ahead and just tape the case back together. Keep things simple, and I think it'll work just fine. One comment I want to make, and that's with the wires that I removed from the what's up. This here in particular, this was a great idea up until I realized that it can be a serious issue, and so I wanted to address it so that nobody else does this, and I'll tell you why. The reason for this was to help share the load, carry the load, so that whenever you went to unplug this connector, if you did not grip the connector at the connector point and you wanted to grab the wires, having the shrink wrap on here kind of helps share the load over the whole area, as where if this connector gets hot enough and melts the solder really has nowhere to go. So it's going to pool at the base of the connector. And whenever it pools, it's going to cause a short, and that short can be very bad. So at least whenever you do the connectors like this, notice the gap between the wires. Here's a battery. Notice again the gap between the wires. So if it does get hot enough, the solder does have a place to go. It doesn't necessarily have to short out and stay pooled there at the base of that connector. So if you've seen this and thought, hey, that's a great idea, well, no, it's really not. I'm saying don't use it, and I just didn't cut it off of this. I cut it off everything else that I had used it on, but I did not cut it off of this because it just wasn't a real issue, because we don't leave this unattended and we don't fly this all the time. So at any rate, I just wanted to bring attention to that. Don't do this. It's not really a safe practice. Thanks for your time and enjoy the hobby.